Sue's the former Poet Laureate of Alabama and currently the Stokes Distinguished Professor of Creative Writing at the University of South Alabama. She is the founder of Negative Capability Press located in Mobile, Alabama. The company has published more than 40 books, many by nationally recognized authors and poets. So please help me give a nice warm Penster's welcome to Sue Brennan Walker.
Thank you very much. Thank you, John. Thank you, Pensters. I've been a Penster for a long time. And so I do want to say that I have retired from the university and I'm now there, a professor emerita there. But I still have student interns that work with me with the press, which is absolutely delightful. And so if you have manuscripts, they're also going to be reading, and every Thursday we sit around and discuss manuscripts. And so it's just a pleasure to be here, and thank you, John. I did not see this booklet until this morning, so I'm not actually going to follow that because I'm going to follow, I do have handouts over there, probably not enough because I didn't know how many people would be here. So I thought what I would do is talk about process, talk about our process. Negative Capability Press has been publishing since 1981, and we now have well over 100 books that we have published, including books from Scotland, from Italy, international books. So I'm very proud of our books. One of our books just won the Academy of American Poetry Prize for Translation, and the author, the translator, got $10,000. What did the press get? Manuscripts. So we now have 500 manuscripts. So I'm going to talk about process and how that is for you. So I think that if you're going, and I'm going to talk primarily about poetry. So the first thing I'm going to have to say is, what is your process? How are you going to go about? And I'm doing this myself for a couple of books that I have now. And I tend to, because I'm not an organized person really, I tend to have poems all over my computer in various places. And I even forget the titles of them because I don't put them in folders sometimes. So what I'm going to do, and what I think writers should do, because you want the manuscript, when you send it to a publisher, to be the best manuscript it can be. And so I'm going to print out all the poems that are unpublished that I want to choose from, and I'm going to spread them out and sit in the middle of them on my floor. You know, and I'm going to say, okay, what have you got here? You know, I've got these poems that are nature poems, so I'm going to put them in one category. I'm going to have another category, and maybe they're poems about family, and I'm going to put them in another category, in another stack. And then there are poems that are hybrid poems. Now, let me say something about hybrid. You know about hybrid cars, and so I really now am enjoying publishing hybrid works, which may be sometimes fragmented essays, mosaic fragmented essays. They may be poetry, they may be random things, different topographies, how they look on the page, couplets, the bop, which is a very popular form right now in poetry. So I'm going to organize into categories, and then I will know what I've got to work with. So that's the first thing I think that you should do, is see what you have, and then organize it. And the next thing is revise, revise, revise. And as I said, we have 500 manuscripts now. My interns are wonderful, they are going through them. I look at every one of them, but I'm going to look at them until I know that whatever that manuscript is not going to be a manuscript I'm going to publish. And then I'm going to stop and I'm going to ask myself, why? What happened in this manuscript that made me know that this is not going to be for me? Now, what I am doing right now is I'm working with two poets, neither of them from Alabama, because I'm not going to single out anybody from Alabama that we're working with, though I love to publish Alabama poets. One of them is from New York, and I just wrote her extensively, and I told her there are so many poems in this manuscript that serve as the axe that broke the frozen sea within me. That you go along, what is it that touched me? And her poems, largely poems about war, which was a category, and they were just wonderful. Then there were other poems that I thought, well, this book would be better if you left those out. We want a book over 100 pages. Right now we have just published a book, I think it's 231 pages, by a writer from Kentucky. But I want, what do you want from your book? What is the overall impression is it that the book is going to leave? Does it have what we call in fiction a kind of narrative arc, a story, something that is compelling, that threads through that? Then backing that up, I want to say also, this poem is going to be printed next to this poem in your book on adjacent pages. What relationship do those two poems have with each other? What is the placement of your poems within the book? What size book are you going to have? Measure your longest line, and that is going to determine what width and height your book is. I've got several over there on the table. One of them I want to mention in particular is Glenda Slater's book, which I simply love, about Shakespeare. Take a look at it. We're so proud of it. Then we have a long, skinny book that happens to be mine because the Mobile Arts Council at one point asked me to write some history of Mobile. And I said, look, everybody's done histories of Mobile that I know of, and they're long. I don't want to do that. So I decided that what I would do would be let Reuben tell where he's been. And Reuben was an actual Great Dane, and his owner was downtown. You see the front, beginning, turn it on the back, the end. But the poems are long and skinny, and so we did that as a fundraiser for the Mobile Arts Council. So look, and then we have a hardback that's large to accommodate the Barry Marks. So look at the sizes. Those are some of the books that the press has published. Now, if you do not want the editor or someone or publisher to divide your lines for you, then you're going to have to see where you want them divided yourself and look at them. What I'm going to do is, and I read these and I'm working with these two writers now carefully, is I'm going to say, okay, what is the end word in each of these lines? If there are just conjunctions or adverbs all over the place, I'm going to think, the I temporarily stops at the end of a line. If it's enjambed and carried over, you're going to read from one line to the next line. But what is that end word going to do for you? Are your poems in stanzas? Or are they not? Are there prose poems in there? What is the overall look and feel of your particular work in poetry? I think that I really read carefully. I do line-by-line edits on books that I really want to publish. What that means is, and I will mention Sam at the moment. Sam is from Kansas. Sam is a university professor. Sam has been a finalist in 5 book competitions. Why didn't any one of them win? One of the editors said, "Send it to Sue, I think she'd like that." So he sent it to me. And right now I'm having the most wonderful exchange with Sam about his poetry. It's a wonderful book that has a lot of erasure and poems within poems. Okay, let's just say that he has a poem, and it can either be a prose poem or not a prose poem. But then he's going to go back and bold certain words within that poem. For instance, if the poem is about his mother, and one theme in the book is about his mother's death and about taking his mother to the ocean. Backstory that's true. In 10 years, he's gotten together with his sisters, 2 sisters, and they are finally taking the mother's ashes to the ocean for burial. So this theme runs through the book. But let's say there's this long narrative poem about taking mother to the ocean, but within that, my mother, what happened? She's gone. Just that. And it's bold, so that within that larger poem, there's this smaller poem. And this happens throughout his particular manuscript. These wonderful poems. Then there is erasure. Strikeouts, blackouts, and faded text. And what he will have is he will start out with a text that looks like you see in any book. And then gradually, the text will fade out until you can't read it anymore. Why? It's an amazing technique. And even within that, there's going to be the bold poem within a poem. So I told him, and it's grayed out if you've done erasure. Blackout fading to gray. And I told him, I said, "Sam, this poem is so much, this book is so much about the ocean, so much about blue. What if, because so many people are using gray scale from black to gray and fade out now, what if you use shades of blue? You know, what if the blue just faded out until you have the faintest blue of the sky?" So we're having this wonderful discussion. And then I said to Sam, "Sam, this is wonderful. Will you go back and count your adverbs? You're going to just, you know, Ezra Pound, he's going to be having a fit. You don't need all these adverbs. Minute details, which is what I mean by revise, revise, revise. Now, start publishing your poems now, what you have. This will go in the acknowledgments section of your book, in which you list, and your awards, like your Pinster's Awards and whatever, but you will have an acknowledgments page or pages in which you list where these poems have been published. It's credentials, you know, it's your history as a writer and a publisher. So start on that now. And you will, I have down here, number 3, and by the way, I don't have enough handouts, but I will give you my email address, and I'll be glad to email anybody who doesn't have a handout. Check out Best 100 Poetry Magazines, and you can Google that. All right, where are you going to send them? Best 100 Magazines. Poetry? Not likely you're going to get published by Poetry. Marge Piercy once told me, what you should do is send out to 3 different magazines, journals. Let's say Poetry. Okay, you don't expect to get published in Poetry. Maybe, but maybe not. But why not try? Then, what other magazine do you really like? What quarterly do you really like and that you would be proud to be published in? send it there. And then finally, okay, I really think that this magazine will take my work. It's a magazine I'll be happy to be in and send it there. Of course, you will have to say it's a multiple submission, but why not aim for the stars and try that at first? So I recommend, again, looking up the best 100 poetry magazines. And then research poetry presses. Now that's what I am doing now, is looking at poetry presses. And I'm going to make a list. I have a notebook, and that notebook includes where I send out poetry and the date I send it out. Chattahoochee Review. And I'm just picked them. Suppose I'm sending it to Chattahoochee Review. How long am I going to have to wait before I hear from Chattahoochee Review? Do I want to sit around and wait for a year and then maybe they're going to reject it? One of my favorite writers in this world, and you can Google her, is Pat Schneider, who has 2 books by, that's Schneider, Pat Schneider, Amherst Artists and Writers Press. In fact, she published one of my books. And Pat is just a wonderful, wonderful friend. With 2 books out from Oxford University Press, Pat has a manuscript that we are now going to publish that Oxford University Press kept for over a year and rejected her. Who has that kind of time? So make a list, find out what their turnaround time really is. What are your favorites? Who then? I'm going to just say, one of my favorite presses now happens to be Tupelo Press. And the editor is a woman by the name Christina Darling. Love that name. And in fact, Negative Capability Press has published a book by Christina Maria Darling. And love what they're doing there. I would say Google them and find out. When you look, okay, Tupelo Press has published, and I'm going to look up and say, okay, who are the people they published? Maybe I know them, maybe I don't. But we live in the world of the internet, which means that, okay, they publish a book by Pat Schneider. That's not true, but anyway, that just... So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to say, Tupelo Press has published Pat Schneider. Who's Pat Schneider? Then I'm going to Google Pat Schneider, and I'm going to see who she is. So I'm going to get some idea of who that press has published. Then I'm going to say, okay, would they like my work? And I'm going to look at some of the books. Maybe I'm going to order from Amazon 2 or 3 of those books so I can see what they look like, hold them in my hand, and have some sense of feel when I do that. So, okay, that is, research your poetry presses. Read the books from those presses. Now, how is the book organized? And this will affect you. Do some of the books use sections? Do they have division? Do they have artwork? I like to, if you look at Glenda's book, I'm going to use you for an example again, Glenda. Glenda has sketches in the book that I think that add just so much to it. If you look at a very odd book that we have published, it's Hank Lazar's book back there. Do open it up and look. It's handwritten. It goes all over the place, and it is one of the strangest books I've ever seen. So do open that up and look at it. So how is it, look, do you want every poem in your manuscript justified left? Which means that they're going to start at the left and go to the right, and no breaks, nothing. I think it's monotonous. At least it is for me. That's not what I want to do anymore. What about reversing that and have some poems justified right? What about having some poems centered? Sam's book that I mentioned before has some poems that are upside down. What about that? And my question to him was, Sam, why are these poems upside down? What is the reader supposed to think? Is the reader supposed to turn the whole thing upside down then and look at it? And there's one poem that's 2 columns. And the left column of that page is just like you read prose straight. The other column is upside down. Okay. So what do you like? Okay. When journals have published your poems, look at those journals. They might like your work as well. Now, putting the book together. It's like getting dressed for a party. What are you going to wear? You want to stand out in the crowd. All of that is going to be in the manuscript. Then I have things here that you should absolutely consider. The presentation, the impression the book makes as a whole, and let me mention then another book, and I don't know how much time we have. How much time do we have, John?
Well, till 11:15, 11:20.
So,
15,
if you will
15
look at
minutes.
number 7, let me mention this. Susan Grimm, Grimm, has a book, Ordering the Storm. And that book offers perspectives from many different poets on assembling your book of poems. I think it's a magnificent book that if you're a poet, you really ought to know about it. Order it from Amazon. Now this is what, the next part is what I have my students do that I meet with them. We have a number of advisory editors. Advisory editors that are famous. And we have, one of them is Marjorie Perloff, who I think is the leading critic in America. Roald Hoffman, who won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. And I see things that have to be science related to Roald Hoffman. Sinajita Naslin, who was at University of Kentucky, poet laureate of Kentucky. So if you Google negativecapabilitypress.org, you will see our books online. You will see who our advisory editors are. So after my students, because this is part of what they get a grade for, is they have to go through a checklist. And then I send it off to an advisory editor. But meaning, what does this whole book mean? What's its theme? Does the poem say what it means? Does it mean what it says? Who says anyway? Is there a narrator? Is there a persona? Is the author himself, herself speaking? And the students have to identify, they have to specifically pick 5 poems in a manuscript and write answers to what I'm telling you right now. Then, word choice. Cliches. Now let me mention ISBN numbers, International Serial Book Number, which all of our books in order have, that anybody in any bookstore can look them up. Library of Congress cataloging and publication number, short LC number. Actually, right now, I've got 3 books that I need to get LC numbers for, but I can't get online to the Library of Congress because during the shutdown, they really shut us down. So when I get on there, it says, you know, you haven't got the right password anymore. I lost my password, it went somewhere. So then I had to try to call them. Don't do that. I held the phone, or I had the phone there for an hour and nobody answered. So then I thought, okay, I'm going to email them. And I did. And they answered me and they said, okay, here is a temporary password for you. But when I put in the temporary password, they say, no, that's not the right password. So I had to email them again. Now I hope to get these LC numbers before the government shuts down again. So, and barcodes. You know what the barcode is that little thing in the back that they can just scan in at the bookstore. So all of our books have to have those particular things. So now, one final word about submittable. How many of you know about submittable? Gosh, I hate submittable, but nevertheless, it's industry standard almost. And as I said, we have now 500 manuscripts on submittable. And I'm going to read until I don't. And then, if I really like something and I keep on going through it, I will probably tell the author, Sam and June, send me by email, SueBrandonWalker@me.com, send me by email your manuscript. I really give a lot of feedback to our authors, like telling Sam about adjectivitis, too many adjectives, too many adverbs, whatever. So submittable is sort of what you're stuck with now. And again, go to the press's website and look up that press, and you'll get a lot of information that is good for the internet now, which is one of the things at the Alabama presses. We are blessed to have a number of Alabama presses. If you want a list of all of them, I'll be happy to send that to you. Is there an inside track? I think so, yes. That inside track is, who do you know? It's not what you know sometimes, it's who you know. And so it is like Christina at Tupelo Press says, we're not going to publish this book, but this looks like something you would really like. Please send it to Sue Walker. That's what I mean by inside track. Okay, now, small press distribution, right? Create Space is no more. And we used to publish books by Create Space. But Amazon bought out Create Space and now uses KDP, which is Kindle Direct Publishing. We have not used KDP. I don't know if I'm going to try it or not. What we're using at the moment is print on demand, which means actually that instead of me, and I'll give you this example, I was on the FBI list. We published, during the Cold War, a book of Russian poets, Russian anthologies. We printed Gorbachev. And so we printed this book, and I printed out 1,000 of them, thinking this is going to be the greatest thing. All the people are going to want this. I must have 800 books in my attic right now. If you want a Russian issue, see me. And because of that, the FBI called me up one day and wanted to know what I was doing that I had published Gorbachev. Really, I'm avoiding names here. Okay, so really what we were doing there is the poems in this book were smuggled into Mobile by a friend. Well, Jay Higginbotham, I'll do it, okay. But later Jay Higginbotham smuggled these poems in. So, but they're wonderful poems, and they're in translation too. But who wants it? Okay. So, all right, so that's a little bit about publishing and distribution. And as I say, we're now using Ingram Lightning Source for our books. They're over there, the hardback ones anyway. Please take a look. Again, it's a pleasure to be with you. If you really want me to look over your manuscript, send me an email. I'll be happy to do it. And I'm so happy to have published authors who are in this room, whether either in an anthology or individual poems. I will mention a few people we have published. Oh, let me do this. Somebody asked me, why negative capability? You mean We ain't got no capability? No, I stole it from John Keats. The title who said, I know what goes to make a man, of achievement, especially in literature, and which Shakespeare possessed so enormously. I mean negative capability, the capacity to be in doubt without irritable reaching after fact and reason. Now, I reach irritably after fact. I want to know the reasons. I feel sort of like Cleopatra, to Mark Antony. If you love me, tell me how much. So that is negative capability. It's really a pleasure to be here with you today. I love Fairhope. I just love it. And so thank you all for coming. Anybody got any questions? Oh, okay. Any questions?
Any questions?
So I wonder if you have self-published a book, do sometimes publishers pick up those books, or do you just start doing another book?
I can only speak for Negative Capability Press. If it's been published, I won't.
You won't?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, if it's been published, I won't.
Well, I guess you just gave a great presentation and everybody got it.
Or everybody said, get out of here.
John, I had a question. I'm sorry, I was on
Oh, okay.
Dr. Walker, would you address or tell us briefly, or can you advise us on submitting poetry to greeting card companies, who I understand pay $5 a word? Of course, you don't keep your copyright, obviously. Writing for greeting card companies?
I don't really know much about greeting card companies. I don't know who does. John, you know about greeting card companies?
Absolutely nothing.
By the way, there's some handouts here. They're about, if you want to pick it up.
Yeah, get them. And then Sue will be there at the table. You can question her afterwards. Three or four different points of business. This is a, what does this say? Fairhope Urology. Who wants to claim this? Yeah, Fairhope Urology. It's here if you want it. Okay, let me go see what I need to do here. Okay, is there any other business that we haven't talked about? Anybody want to bring anything up? This is your last chance. Okay, good. Here. Please stand up. Thank you.
Hi, I just wanted to ask you about your anthology from the Pensters that you were collecting.
Yeah, it's nailing now, but it's coming up very quickly because I'm thinking that at the Arts and Crafts Fair, that would be a good place to launch it.
Oh, yeah. Perfect.
Right, so, that's a wonderful place. Yeah, everybody's saying wonderful. So it's on my front burner now, so thank you for asking.
All right, no problem.
Okay. And yes, ma'am.
I just want to say thank you for allowing visitors to come.
Oh, we love visitors, so please, feel free to come back always. And in fact,